Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2. Hey there, hi there, ho there. RHJunior, RHJunior Reality Check Live, coming to you live over the system of boob tubes known as YouTube, bringing you the one, the only, thank God for that, Spleen Squeezins. Yay! I said I was going to get it started at 7 or 8 o'clock, and it is, okay, it's 2 minutes after 8. Where? I failed. I gotta tell you, I had to wait until it's late, because it is hot. It is hot. You know my place. I got two crappy little air conditioners that are meant for like, who do they make these teeny tiny little air conditioners for? Because it can't possibly be for cooling a house, or especially not a trailer. Ugh. Because I got an air conditioner at one end of the house, an air conditioner at the other end of the house, and you could roast a chicken in the middle of my house. Okay. In good news, okay, the DVDs, the Girls of Summer DVDs have arrived, and I will be mailing those out tomorrow. I'm gonna stick them in the mailbox tonight. Actually, I didn't want to stick them out in the middle of the day because it is literally that hot. It is that hot. I figure if I stuck them out there, okay, they mailed the DVDs to me. So I figure they gotta be, they'll be okay being mailed back out. But I'm going to be mailing these out, stick them out in the mailbox to be mailed out tomorrow. So everybody will be getting theirs that ordered them. Except for two. I've got two here, exactly, that are to England, the United Kingdom. And that, I'm going to have my handy-dandy assistant, young lady, take it down to the post office and mail it out, air mail or foreign mail or whatever they call it. A couple hundred years, and they still haven't streamlined that process of mailing something out of the country. It's the 21st century, and you still need a postage stamp. Another good news: I sent off the last check, what should be the last check, to the IRS yesterday. So once that is cleared, back to square one, So yay on that. And I've already sent my landlord that check, so there, yay on that too. I've still got to, got to send out another check for this coming month. Back to the grind, boys. But at least I won't be. Trying to send 300 to him and 100 to them, and 150 to somebody else, and all this other caca. Downside is I am off food stamps at the moment. That sort of puts a dent in things. Largely because I did, I have to send them a bunch of information on. I have to send them a bunch of information on the GoFundMe campaign. What the money was spent for, etc., etc. And I've been waiting for the IRS to cash the check so I could print it out. I don't even have. Come to find out, I don't even have ink in the printer at the moment. So I gotta wait. Do all these things. Yay! So much fun. So much fun and so much excitement. Okay. Oh my. I'm still sweating to death here. What else did I want to mention? I didn't want to mention random passing thought. Have you ever heard the soundtrack from a Japanese porn? It's the internet. You can confess to it. I mean, I'm like, whoa, that's an interesting anime clip. But I've noticed something. I've seen it. I've seen it, and I've heard the Japanese anime clips, the manga clips. The hentai. That's what they call it, hentai. Hentai is just a Japanese word for pervert, by the way. Very straightforward people, the Japanese, on that regard. But I will note this: they've been talking for years about how the birth rate in Japan is so terribly low. And I have heard sound clips from Japanese hentai, and I'm like, I think I can solve this mystery, because all the women, and no matter what, no matter who they have, they all sound like Lisa Simpson being tortured with pliers. This is why the Japanese men aren't having babies. They're just waiting for their ears to stop bleeding. I mean, they sound like, seriously, they sound like somebody's torturing. Like they gassed a girl up on helium and started torturing her with lit matches. What the heck? Hey, wah, Kawachi, Mitsubishi. I don't know. I'm serious. Well, it's the internet. You're going to see things, and that's the thing I've noticed about. I've seen some. I've seen some clips and heard some sound clips from Japanese ecchi and hentai, and the female always sounds like that, and it is the most unsexy, most annoying sound I've ever heard in my life. I mean, it's like somebody squeaking styrofoam or nails. Of course, seriously. Okay. I just had to tell somebody that. I just had to mention it, because I can't be the only person thinking this. And I'm like, I'm amazed that this fact hasn't killed the Japanese schoolgirl fetish that so many people seem to have. Can you imagine marrying a beautiful woman? And you're in a moment of the throes of passion, and she makes a sound like a dying seal. Just no. No. Okay, moving on to something a little more, general audiences. Okay. Mark Harris, did you ever see my message on doing a comment reading episode? Okay, comment reading episode. Okay, why not? Comments where? Comments what? Comments, what kind of comments would you like to hear? Oh, you mean comments about my writing? The comment section on my stories, comment section on my artwork, comment section on the comic strips. What? Is there anything in specific on the stories? Okay, I've only done one really original thing. It's one thing that's not a fan fiction. And it was that I was starting on it, and it was called the Sanguine Chronicles. The Sanguine Chronicles. The idea was that it was supposed to be. Actually, this was a throwback. This was a callback. The idea was that you're supposed to be reading a journal by a kid who is half vampire and half werewolf, and that is and also you'd be reading all these other little articles and journal entries and stuff by his friends, by his enemies, by his co-workers, and so forth. But you know, it's all about him having to deal with the fact that he inherited both halves of the werewolf versus vampire problem, and it was going to be something of a parody of Twilight, too. I hate to say it, but most of my projects start out. I've noticed this in myself, and I don't know what to make of it, but I've noticed that a lot of my projects start out as a take that to something in pop culture that annoys me. And I'm not sure that's healthy. But anyway, it's the only real original thing that I've done. Totally original that isn't a fan fiction is what I mean. And I just got so bored with it and so dissatisfied with it. And there was just no there. There was just no story there. Just a nifty gimmick with a possibility for a couple of jokes, but no real motivating or captivating story. I couldn't see anything beyond that. I just couldn't see, okay, where does the character go next? And I'm like, I don't care. When you reach a point where you don't care what happens to your own characters next, it just sort of dies. I've kept it. Maybe I'll change my mind later on. Maybe I'll, have this great big God will give me some big, lightning bolt surge of inspiration, and I will suddenly become, the next literary genius, and I'll be able to, I'll look back at this and go, what a brilliant idea. Here's what I can do with it. But not. Not right now. Okay, you want to, other than that, all I've got is fan fictions. And, okay, now, I'm not sure what you expect out of the comments, but, well, let's go look at here. I'll just go back to Archive of Our Own. I think I think the reason I've gotten along so well on Archive of Our Own is because it's not so specialized. Now, when you got film fiction, it's, film fiction is Friendship is Magic, My Little Pony fan fiction website. Kind of a very narrow interest group, which means a relatively small audience, which means a very closer knit community, quote unquote. Or just a small town. It basically means, in other words, got that small town blight, where everybody in the town knows your business. And and won't shut up about it behind closed doors. And if somebody gets a grudge against somebody, everybody has a grudge against somebody, and family feuds last forever, and so on and so forth. Harper Valley PTA. Look up that song, play it, you'll get what I'm talking about. But when you've got a larger archive, even you can excuse, in a big city, it's a lot easier to ignore the skeevier parts of a big city than it is to ignore the bad side of the tracks in a small town. You know what I'm saying? Okay, let's look at this. Okay, there's nothing new in comments in some time. Let's see here. Okay, I have got 14 stories here. No, actually, I got 16 stories. Okay, let's see. Okay, 2 of the stories are actually spin-offs from my Drabble selection. And now, what got me into the first story I deleted. I deleted 2 of the stories that were probably my oldest fanfic. One was called Fanfic as Crap Sack. Now, the reason it was nothing but a what do they call them? Not a slash. Is a crack fiction. It's a crack fiction. In other words, totally ridiculous, not meant to be taken seriously, etc., etc. And I was just basically lashing out in vexation at all the horrible entire, particularly against the grotesque, the more grotesque cliches in My Little Pony fan fiction stories, and it is really disturbing. As you'll see this, let's be honest, you'll see these trends in every fan fiction, and it says sad things about human nature. This is you look at this stuff and you go, these people need Jesus, and I'm not being tongue in cheek about that either. You got these atheists. Oh, wouldn't it be wonderful without this? You remember what is that musician? He's saying, "Imagine no religion. Imagine no." We don't have to imagine. We can look at our society and see what it looks like when faith and God and Christianity and Jesus are leached away. It's nasty. But anyway, I wrote fanfic as crap. It was, it was just basically just a very cranky man giving a very unsubtle beatdown to every horrible, gruesome, violent, grimdark, and sexually grotesque and vulgar fan fetish and trend that I could lay hands on. And then I started following it up with one as it was a sequel, Fanfic is Crapsack 2, Electric Boogaloo. And if you get that joke, you are over 40 years old. Now, where it was more about the tendency of these, it's hot topic teenagers. You know what I'm saying? You get these juvenile, immature people who think that being angsty, grimdark, bleak, and horrible means that they are more enlightened than you are. They know the truth. They've seen past the curtain. They've pulled the curtain aside, and they see the man behind the curtain. They know the truth, There is no Santa Claus. Every angsty 12-year-old on the planet, And I started, but I look back over it, and quite frankly, the writing was of my own writing in both these stories was pretty crass, kind of vulgar, for which I apologize. And it was, I just wasn't pleased with. So I finally pulled it down and talked to I may rewrite them. I may just repost them someplace else. I don't know. Can't decide. Part of me wants to dump them and forget them all about them, but other part of me wants to put them up as, another part of me wants to keep working on them, and still another part just says, put it up, don't try and change your own history. This is, your old artwork, your old work is your past, and you can't erase the past. You can only live with it. This is what the problem is with all these quote-unquote banned cartoons and things. They're not trying to be more sensitive. They're trying to erase the past. And you can't... And this gives me... The same people who complain about the winners writing history are the ones who are trying to change all the history books. If you want to know your own past, you have to see the past, warts and all. Because when the truth does come out, it can cause all sorts of damage. Because people, people get the wrong impression of the past and are it causes too much trouble. Leave it be. Leave those, leave those blackface old minstrel shows up on video. Leave the old quote unquote racist cartoons up. Leave them up. Let us judge for ourselves. You get, a lot of the problem we have with the South, with the history of the Civil War and the Confederacy, is because most of the truth has been sponged out. Oh, they were fighting a war over slavery. No, they weren't fighting a war over slavery. Slavery was just a single issue among many. The North had just gotten into the habit of using the issue of slavery as a brickbat against the South, no matter what the South was talking about. And so the South threw it back in their teeth. At least the politicians did. But quite frankly, the South was not as invested in slavery and in racial divide as the North was. You know, the history is, you know, everybody talks about, you know, oh, Abraham Lincoln, let's sing spiritual about him, about he freed the slaves. Nobody knows that Abraham Lincoln, by today's standard, was a flaming racist. He has, you know, there are letters by Abraham Lincoln where he outright says that the white man has to assure his dominant place over the African American, to over the Negro, to preserve society. This is not the, you know, this is not the enlightened social justice warrior you're looking for. There were a lot of things flying back and forth during the Civil War. And slavery was just one issue among many. But because the people tried to sanitize the history of the South, tried to forget the truth of it, they forget that the North was just as racist. And we lose perspective. We lose perspective. And we can't learn from history if people keep rewriting it. Now, moving on. Okay, getting back to the commentary that you were after. Yeah, let's see here. Let's see. What story? Well, you know, I don't know what that's about. Okay, I've got dozens of stories here. I don't know which one would be worth reading. A great deal of these stories used to be on FimFiction, and a huge chunk of commentary by people who read the story was just lost, because I just shut everything down, deleted my stories, moved over to Archive of Our Own, because I just gotten sick of all the nonsense. Look, I am a hard person to live with. I know this about myself. I'm very confrontational. I'm very hostile. I am very stubborn to the point of stupidity sometimes. And the fact that you're right doesn't change the fact that you're a jackass, you know. But contrary, whereas the fact that you're a jackass doesn't change the fact that you're right. But so a great deal of the commentary just gone. And a lot of the insights, of course, a lot of the other crap that came along with it. You wouldn't believe some of the thing I had to put up with on FimFiction. You see these little insular communities, they think they're, you start out with a small fandom group and they turn into a gay pride parade. Everybody uses SJW. We're not just talking about the people that make a political fuss. We're talking, these people. You got the gay pride movement and the feminists and the leftists and the fellow travelers with them. The militant vegans and everything else, and the extremophiles, I guess you'd call them. And of course, calling them extreme isn't fair either, because that implies there is no extremism in doing the right thing. And these people are not dedicated to doing the right thing. They're just dedicated in taking a bad idea as far as they possibly can. So you come up with a word for that. Come on, find it. It's probably in German. A word for people who insist on taking a bad idea as far as they can. And that's what these people are. And they show up. They consider these little fandoms to be their fiefdom. Is that fiefdom? 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 I don't know how to pronounce it. they take them over and turn them into a shrill soapbox, and they do that with every, once again, we're talking about Gamergate. They couldn't, they've already got the mainstream, which they got they got the three main channels, ABC, NBC, CBS. They took that over, these extremophiles, and they took over what was essentially the core of America's pop culture. The big newspapers, the big TV channels, the big radio franchises, the big syndicates, the big movie makers. And so now they're trying to pick off all the little bitty fruit, the little archipelago of indie publishers and movie makers and smaller fandoms and franchises like video games, comic books, all the other little stuff. They've pulled down the big kill, and now they're going after everything else, one at a time. This is one of the fundamental aspects of these people, is that they cannot stand the idea of anyone anywhere existing who does not absolutely and positively and totally agree with them on absolutely everything. They don't want to give the world a better way. They want to take the world over and stuff it down the world's throat, whether it's a good way or not. They must, this is their impulse. They must devour everything. And so, you're a part of this innocent little fandom somewhere out in the of a particular show or a particular franchise, a particular movie, and they will come out of the woodwork. They will come squirming up out from under the woodpile like rats, looking to nibble it to death, to gnaw it to death, one tiny little rat mouthful at a time. Film fiction used to be about making, fan fiction of My Little Pony. Now it's just an outlet for lesbian porn. Because they're so enlightened. They're so enlightened, because lesbians are just better than normal people, don't you know? As it is, they don't want to, they didn't want equality, they want superiority. It's like the movie Scott Pilgrim versus the World. He has to beat the 7 evil exes. One of the exes is a vegan. He's blonde and Aryan-looking and tall and broad-shouldered. And they start to get into, and they're at a neutral spot. They're all sitting around a dinner table at some diner, and a fight breaks, the fight breaks out, and Scott Pilgrim goes to punch the guy, and the guy psychically blasts him across the room with these, Aquaman waves from his forehead. And he gets up and he goes, how the heck did a vegan get psychic powers? And the vegan's girlfriend goes, don't you know, vegans are just better than regular people. That's their attitude. They want the world to put a crown on their head and acknowledge them for their superior, that men are superior to women, that sexually promiscuous people are superior to people, to chaste and monogamous people, that homosexuals are superior to heterosexuals, that bisexuals are superior to everyone, and that's their goal. They want the world to praise them and put them on top of the pedestal for being freaks. And they spend their entire their entire lifestyle is it orbits around preaching to everybody and to each other how superior they are, because we're not prejudiced against gay people. That makes us superior. We don't oppose. We support veganism. That makes us superior. We recycle. We are morally superior to you. We're more enlightened. Give me my halo, my harp, and my wings. And stand still while I kick you out the front door. And the fact that there is even a opposing idea, a philosophy or belief or system of reasoning that opposes them or does not agree with them, is anathema to them. They must snuff it out. Now, let's look at the comments here. Let's see here. We want to talk about the comics. I wrote this. This is a little short story. It's called, let's see here, Yes, It Matters. Now, this was a response to another story called Would It Matter If I Was? The story was Would It Matter If I Was by G-A-P-J Axie. G-A-P-J-A-X-I-E. And I submitted a story. He said, all right, you got an opposing point of view, go for it. And I said, great. And I posted it, and the film fiction admins just popped a PMS pill and threw a hissy. And, do not stop, go straight to the Crimson Tide, Right into PMS at Warp 9. But anyway, I wrote a story called Yes, It Matters. His story is that it's set right after Shining Armor and Cadence's wedding. And Twilight and Fluttershy are cleaning up after the wedding. They're in the ballroom. They're talking after everything, all the dust is settled and the party's over, and he presents it. Basically, he presents it. That Twilight basically says we're going to have to search the country. We're going to have to start interviewing people. We're going to have to start checking to see. We're going to have to start doing scans to see if if ponies are actually changelings in disguise. Because they've just been invaded. By a shape-changing enemy race. And Fluttershy, pulled the usual crap, the crap that the leftists did back when Joe McCarthy. Everybody hates on Joe McCarthy. Joe McCarthy was right. He came out and said, our society, our government, and our entertainment industry have been infiltrated by communist operatives. And I have names. And we know they're out there. Everybody talks about, he's just evil, tyrannical jerk. No, he was a jerk. He may have been a jerk. But he was right. And they had communists and communist sympathizers. And this is not a joke. This is at a time when a communist country by the name of the USSR had nuclear missiles pointed at all our cities. And I hate to break it to you, but those missiles are still out there. And I don't think they've changed targeting very much. And the communists had come out over and over again and said, we will bury you, we will conquer you, we will take over the earth. And that was their goal. And they were working damn hard at it too. That was what Korea was about. That was what Vietnam was about. That was all the brush fire wars that sprang up around the world were about. The Soviet Union trying to expand its influence across the globe. And their goal was to devour the world. Just like always. And McCarthy came out, and this was a time of serious peril, and our country was in serious danger. And Joe McCarthy came out and said, these people, we've got sympathizers with the communist regime, running around in our entertainment industry and in our educational industry and in our government, and we need to stop them. And he was pilloried. He has been pilloried ever since. Except all the things he came out with turned out to be true. Years, after the Soviet Union collapsed, notes came out. Paperwork came out. Surprise! There were outright spies working for the Soviet Union, scattered throughout Hollywood. And they had sympathizers and collaborators and everything under the sun. Nowadays, you can come out and tell everybody that you support nobody cares about that now. You can come out and be a multimillionaire Hollywood celebrity movie maker, come out and say, that you support the mad mullahs in the Mideast, down with America and, down with the great white Satan, and they'll pat you on the back. There was a time when we still valued our survival as a nation, though. When some of us still do. And when they started trying to do the investigation, all these sympathizers and apologists came out and said, well, what if I was a communist? Would you turn me in? Huh? Would you turn me in? Would you betray me? I'm your family. Or you say you love me, but would you... Am I a communist, or I just dress like one? And all this other crap. So I wrote this story. I said, yes, it matters. And basically, I picked up where he left off with the story. He said, and Fluttershy, basically, Twilight Sparkle turns around and says, Fluttershy, are you stupid? Yes, it does matter. We have an enemy that has openly stated it wants to destroy us. They've even tried to invade us just now. And they are perfectly set up to infiltrate us. So yes, it would matter if it turned out you were a changeling. Because it means that everything you told us about yourself in the past was a lie. And if you turned out to be a changeling, yeah, you're going to have to work and reestablish the trust. You would have violated our trust. You're going to have to work hard to regain it. And if these people out here, if there are people out there that are citizens of our country who are changelings, they're going to have to justify their behavior. Why did they hide what they are? Why did they not step forward and warn us? And why did they not step forward and help us when we were attacked? And they're going to have to answer some hard questions, and they are going to have to work to regain the trust, because it will be self-evident that they were living under a falsehood. And whoa! Everybody just blew up at that. Oh man, nobody liked that at all. Let's see here. Let's see what kind of comments say. This was where I reposted it. So all I've got is the comments from when it was posted to Archive of Our Own. It's got 49 comments. Yeah, I still listed it as unfinished because I sort of felt that I might have another chapter or two in there. Where Fluttershy confronts the others with the fact, surprise, I'm a changeling. This was written way back when, before we knew anything about the changelings, about how they worked or anything. So, it was all fan speculation. Let's see. Okay, Wanderer put this one in. Given your writing, I look forward to the continuation. Bluntly, this work is amazing. Gapjaxie's original had issues with Fluttershy being too confrontational compared to her canon self. Well, I don't know about that. Fluttershy's a doormat a lot of the times in the fandom, in the canon, but she can also have a spine like iron when it comes to protecting somebody else. Even if it's something like a little bug, she will step up and deliver, and she's always been like that. All the way back to Dragonshy, like the 5th episode of the show. But anyway, while your version captures her timidity far better, Moreover, it really puts you in Twilight's horseshoes, so to speak. You have a terrific grasp of the emotional turmoil she's feeling as she contemplates one of her friends being something completely different from who and what she's come to know. Yeah, this I appreciate the commentary on on their emotional side of it. The capturing how torn up Twilight has to be about this possibility. But I think what sort of got missed is that she's torn up because she's basically a princess in training at this point, and this is her country that is in danger. This is her world. This is her home. This is her city of birth, and it has been exposed to a terrible peril, and people like Fluttershy are wanting to play silly ass games with it. This is one of Alinsky's rules for radicals. Uh, he refers to it as forcing the opposition to live up to their standards. What he really means by that is straw manning their standards and falsely accusing them of not living up to it and making it look like they aren't. That's the idea behind all these accusations they make. Oh, you say anything and you're like, oh, and they're like, oh, you're racist. Oh, you're sexist. And you call yourself enlightened and progressive, and you supposedly believe in freedom of this, that, and the other, but you think we should say, you believe in freedom of religion, but you want to oppose Muslims opening etc., etc., etc. Straw manning, just basically convince, trying to make it look like the opposition is violating their own moral principles by distorting the facts. It's a dirty pool trick. As one writer put it, these are principles, not a suicide pact. Got a lot of comments, people wanting to see more of it. But, it only pops out when it pops out. I like this. What the Raven Senon said here is, it keeps the emotional punch a lot of stories go for without the stupid manipulative button pressing. Twilight does not automatically lose her intelligence. Indeed, part of Twilight's emotional response process is to go through such a thought experiment. Oh, Dr. Wolf did a reading of this story, by the way. It's posted up on YouTube. I have to say, I'm impressed by Dr. Wolf. It was nice of him to do a reading of it. But I can't say that Dr. Wolf's reading style really matches the voice I hear in my head when I'm reading these stories. After when I'm reading or writing these stories. His voice is too soft. It comes across like somebody reading a bedtime story to a child, and it doesn't quite fit. That's me. That's me. That's my opinion for what it's worth. And I don't want to diss the guy for considering put the effort in. Yeah, a little commentary about my fallout with the FimFiction mods there. I'm still getting the occasional email. Where did your stories go? Over here, where there aren't freaks running things. So, yeah. Oh my. I just don't know what to think about some of these people sometimes. I just don't know where to go with it. Okay. Ooh, bugs. Bugs in the face. Ugh. Shoo, 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 shoo. Are you guys getting me through? Am I coming through? Am I coming through here? Loud and clear? One of the little one-shot stories I did is called Red Meat. I have read so many stories where the ponies in Equestria are all they're all vegetarian. Okay, we can go with that. Though I will point out that that's not 100% true in real life. I'll get to that later. But okay, fine. Yeah. But in these stories, the ponies freak out. I mean, they just absolutely lose their little pony minds when they find out that there's another species that eats meat. And I just had to just skewer that thing, just drive a spike in it. I point out, okay, and it's basically this little one chapter story is red meat. Basically, the rest of the main six accidentally stumble across Fluttershy as she is dealing with one of the realities of life with wild creatures. And namely, she's a moose she knew has just died, and she has gone out and butchered it up for her meat-eating animal friends. And they have just stumbled across her when she is dragging the corpse home, covered in blood and gore. and I just ran with it as far as I could. Oh my. Look, this is reality. Think about it. Everybody thinks it's horrible that animals are raised in barns and then they're killed for meat. Have you ever seen how a wild animal dies? Watch Wild Kingdom. Watch a couple of episodes of Wild Kingdom where they pull one predator pulls down a prey animal. That is a horrible way to die, and it's usually not quick and clean either. Sometimes these animals will still be alive even as they're being eaten. Life as a wild animal is one that is packed end to end with fear, sickness, injury, pain, and usually ends with incredible suffering, pain, and a horrible terror, mind-blowing terror and death. Compared to the swift and merciful death that humans give to their livestock, you ask the average wild animal, that probably sounds like paradise. To say nothing of the fact that they spend their lives not having to worry about food. They're protected from the elements, they're protected from predators, they're protected from starvation and disease. And when the time comes for them to finally pass on to the great beyond, they do so swiftly and as painlessly as possible. And this was actually another response story. They had it was a short little joke story. The new human has been arrived, and they're all worried because they know that humans need to eat meat too, and they were worried about him getting sickly, and they're all arguing back and forth what they should feed him. And at the end of it, they go, "Well, nobody care if Angel disappeared." Angel money, and I once again I did my own spin on it. And this is what I came up with. To generate quite a bit. Even here, it's got like 90, almost 100 comments. Yeah, we got a few vegans that popped up, vegans and vegetarians. You can't tell a vegan or vegetarian nothing. You can't. Look, I hate to break it to y'all. Vegetarianism is a luxury of the 21st century Western civilization lifestyle. It is not a natural or healthy lifestyle. There's a well, you got these little Asian people that they don't eat much red meat, and they're little, they're stunted, teeny tiny. There are just simply nutrients. There are nutrients you simply cannot get except from meat. And then you got these dum-dums that come out with half facts, like a pound of broccoli has more protein than a pound of meat. Yeah, have you ever seen a pound of broccoli? A quarter-pound steak versus a quarter-pound of broccoli. You'll be eating broccoli until it comes out your ears, just trying to get the same amount of protein, protein in general. And you will not get the proteins. You will not get the amino acids. You will not get the stuff you need. When man fell, God stepped in and made some changes in the world so that and in ourselves, so that we would be able to survive. And it's an ethical issue. It's a moral issue too. Veganism and vegetarianism, it's not about health. It's never been about health. It's been about they grew up watching Bambi's mother getting shot and just couldn't deal with it. And on a more expansive point, they grew up believing that animals are people too. They're not. Okay. They should be treated kindly and compassionately, and dealt with as humanely as possible. But God pretty much established what the pecking order was. When Adam and Eve left the Garden of Eden, the first thing God did was he slew a couple of animals and made their skins into clothing for Adam and Eve to wear. And it was, see here, this is, this is how much more important than these animals you are to me. And I don't care if you don't believe the story or not. And if you're an atheist, well, I'm sorry then. My condolences. But look at it this way, even if you're an atheist, humanity is at the pinnacle. We did not spend a million years hacking our way to the top of the food chain just to sit there and graze like a bunny. We're not designed to live on lettuce. We can survive on it, but we will not be nearly as healthy or well off. But these people, they consider the welfare of animals to be more important than the well-being of human children. And they're hypocrites about it too, because what they propose, the world they propose, means more animals dying. I think the estimate is that a dozen animals, like mice, birds, chipmunks, squirrels, snakes, die for like every acre of organic farming you do. Yeah, those, it's not like they go out there and clear the mice and the birds out of the way before they run those big old tractors through. Little extra fertilizer, there you go. And all the animals that humanity has domesticated, they have thrived precisely because humanity domesticated them. If humanity stopped eating steak, an entire species would die out. If we stopped eating steak, stopped drinking milk, they would die out, because literally cows need to be milked. If they don't, they can get they can suffer a great deal of pain. They get very sick and die. Sheep need to be sheared on a regular basis because they do not shed their wool. They had one sheep that had pictures of it. It had run off and somehow managed to survive for 5 years on its own. And when they finally found it, it looked like somebody had stuck 4 or 5 sheep together. It was just a huge ball of wool with feet. I think it set a world record for the amount of wool it got from a single shearing. The domestic animal, forget the house pets. They would not survive. Most of them would just flat die. When corgis ruled the earth. No. Man. I don't know. I don't know what to think of people. I don't know what to think. Well, I know what I think. Not sure what what I can say about it. Now, they made a comment here that said, he said, Fluttershy shouldn't be this chipper about this sort of thing. And I pointed out she's already done her crying over poor Mr. Moose. Now she can be happy that all her hungry little carnivore friends will get to eat well. Look, if you're going to be a nature child, or more likely a farmer who slaughters his own meat, you got to develop some coping mechanisms. Apparently, several of them. I get these comments. They were. I was trying not to disturb my coworkers in the office by cracking up while I read this. I seem to be encouraging bad habits in people's reading while at work. What can you say? Hey, hey. Well, it's been shown that there are animals in Equestria that are not intelligent. They do have, the cows and the sheep have spoken. They can speak. And the worthwhile theory is that basically the cows and the sheep, they took a look at the idea of building a civilization and said, screw it, the ponies want to do it, let them do it. Here, tell you what, we'll trade you our milk and our wool and all this crap. We'll trade you our milk and our wool, for a fenced-in place to sleep. That work for you? That works for me. Great. Now, you got to remember, they're making a kids show, and they're not going to care too much about things like world-building continuity, if you know what I mean. Well, okay, I promised myself I was going to do some work today. I was going to take this time and do some drawing, finish up. Well, I was going to finish up the next page of Tales of the Questor, at least. I had an idea. Doggone it, I had an idea. I put it up. Okay, so let's see if I can. What do I Manga Studio? Trying to open Manga Studio here. Mango Studio. Bananarama. Display capture, come on. Game capture, image, media source, window capture. Create new. Okay. I have no idea what I'm doing here. Bingo! Ta-da! Okay. Ah, that's better. Okay, that's... I do not know what I'm doing, but I'm doing it well. I can see this here, just squishing this big window into a small window. And let's see here. Yeah. Okay, I managed to figure out how to capture the screen on my Manga Studio. Little bunny foo-foo hopping through the forest. He said. Okay, as you can see, I've gotten a little ways since the last time we checked in. Oh, I beg your pardon. Hmm. Where's the... Oh, there's the pen. Marker pen. Blue. You can do 5. G. This page, he's basically he's going to find out that the people's opinion of him is a little mixed at the moment. Big Toothless has a few friends with him. From that little village, and also some of the natives of the town here are sort of calling, yeah, he saved us from the elves, but he also, you know, he saved us from the Fae, but he also managed to dump a dragon down our backs. And he's got the church sniffing around, and so yeah. What is it, the more I work on this, the more I feel like I really should be doing something else. Never happy, never satisfied, never sure of where I'm supposed to be. You know, there are times I wish, I seriously wish that I had pursued an art career, doing artwork and writing and drawing for some Christian publication, like these companies that produce Sunday school materials for churches for their Sunday schools, or something like that. Because I think that I would at least not be constantly second guessing myself. I wouldn't have this constant whispering voice in the back of my head. You know, you're drawing those fantasy comics. You're drawing fantasy comics about magic and witchcraft and all these other things. And you're drawing these science fiction comics about make believe. And and you're just not, you're not doing what you're supposed to be. I would at least. I would at least look at it. I would at least be able to look at it. Be like being, a minister, or a missionary. You go, I'm out. Once you're something like a missionary or an evangelist, you can look at those doubts and go, look at what I'm doing here. Just how much more spiritually devoted, religiously devoted, do I have to be before these doubts stop plaguing me? But when I got into more secular work, the idea of stuff that wasn't overtly, directly or even indirectly, it was not meant for religious purposes, for Christian purposes. I sort of lost the ability to say that. Look, I'm not. When you're doing something like this, you go, you're not doing it for Jesus. You're doing it for yourself. And any kind of any attempt you make, any attempt you make to make it more one of the first things you're taught as a child in a Christian home is that everybody has a purpose. Every Christian soul has a purpose before Jesus, something that God has intended for them to be doing, a calling. And that to do anything else is to be doing less. That in the end, when you stand before God, He's going to be disappointed in you that you weren't doing what you were supposed to. Said you were out doing stuff to please yourself instead. This is just me talking through my angst. Don't go running on. Oh, he's thinking of giving up the comics. He's thinking of doing this. He's planning on doing that. No, I'm not planning anything. I'm trying to get down to the roots of my feelings and my beliefs, and what little faith I have, and just talk things out. Trying to understand myself. I wish I could go back. I wish I could go back and just start it all over. Start everything all over. Start over right. I was afraid to make a plan because once you made a plan, you were committed to it, and then if you picked wrong, you were riding right off a cliff with it. And I ended up riding off with off a cliff anyway. No peace. I don't know what I'd be doing even if I did. Even if I did start over. It's a little late in my life to think about starting over, you know. You know, it'd be one thing. It was like if I was like 47 and, you know, hale and hearty and everything else, but I'm not. I've got physical problems that make, and I'm 47 going on 80. You know, I'm not going anywhere. So I don't know what to do. I've started on something that even though I've just, even if I did decide I wanted to stop, I can't. Too many commitments and too many obligations. And even then, I'm wondering if I'm ever going to be finished. You know, started the merry-go-round ride ages ago, and I don't know how to stop. Stopping to rest a minute. Stopping to rest. Stopping to think. Well, he ought to give a monk vibe. The werewolf character ought to give him a monk vibe. He's a monk. Oh well, actually a monk acolyte. He's from a religious sect that posed as monks in order to hide in plain sight. He's a pseudo monk. Just want to sit here and thump my head for a while. I always love that animation. I get it. I get it. I got it. I get the concept. Well, that is the running joke. That is sort of an in joke there. He's a monk. He's also. I love how I love how Dungeons and Dragons has reinterpreted a monk to mean somebody from the Far East with martial arts skills. Now, why don't they get why don't they make a do monks have religious abilities? The priests have turn undead and all that. Why don't they make a monk priest combination? Because when people called on monks out in they would call the people out in the Far East. They if they went looking for a monk, it wasn't for a kung fu match. They went out there looking for religious purposes. So why don't they make a category? Why don't they make a class of priest with monk abilities, or a class of monks with priest abilities? I'm getting angry at myself. I'm getting frustrated at myself. I just want to grab everything and chuck it, or I just don't know why. I just want to grab everything and just chuck it out the window. This was why I was so afraid to commit when I was younger to anything. Because I was convinced that I'd reach a point where I realized, no, I'm on the wrong way. I'm doing this. I don't want to do this anymore. It's the wrong thing. It's not it's not right. It's not what I meant, and I would be stuck. I wanted to have all the choice in the world, and not be stuck with anything. That's one of the things that you're afraid of most when you're young, is that you'll start, you see all these, everybody gives you all the, oh, you have so many options. Yeah, and that's what's terrifying, because you realize that once you start down one path, it just gets narrower and narrower and narrower, and you can't turn back, and you're stuck. And if you've realized you've made a mistake, it's too late. You hear one of the things you hear a lot about is these confessionals, testimonies, whatever you want to call it. When Christian get together, they have some Christian talk about how they literally chucked everything out the window and went out and became a missionary, or they became a preacher, or they became this or that, they became a televangelist, or they became a spirit, a musician, for a religious musician, and we just threw everything out the window and what does that say about the rest of us? What is it? Are we all just unworthy because we don't chuck our entire, we can't chuck our entire lives out the back door when when we feel a calling or a need to change. Everybody talks about how great that is, how wonderful it is. Even secular society, they talk about just abandon it all and make a great leap. And they don't tell you about the ones that made the great leap and then went splat on the pavement. How many people have made the great daring leap and ended up having to turn back? And those people are mocked in Bible terms also. People who set out to build a great house and couldn't finish it. So you can't quit, you can't keep going, and you can't turn back. I've been doing this on and off. I've been doing this drawing thing on and off for about. I've been doing it with varying degrees of professionalism. Let's put it this way, and none of them, and no degree at too high a level, to be fair. I recently got a letter from a guy saying, oh, I read your comics, it's very nice, but if you're wanting to be a professional, you're going to have to, you're going to have to change a few things, and do a lot of different things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm like, yeah. That's my whole life. My whole life could be summed up as me when I was playing in Little League Baseball. Afraid to take a swing. I'd either strike out or I'd walk to first base. I once got so spazzed out, the kid flubbed the pitch. The ball went over my head, and I still swung at it because I was so spazzed. It was just about the most embarrassing moment of my life. I freaked out so bad. You miss all the ones you don't swing at. And I'm like, yeah, but you miss most of the ones you swing at, too. This is the terrible thing about life lessons, is that you learn them all when it's too late. You take the test, then you get the lesson. And that's when you're lucky. Sometimes you take the test and you go for years before they finally give you the lesson. And by the time they give it to you, you're so old you can't remember where you got the test. Yeah, make my comics an offering to God. Can I tell you the story of Cain and Abel? Throwing what you have on the altar isn't always the answer. It has to be an acceptable offering. This is what I do because I can't afford psychotherapy. This is what I do because I can't afford therapy, and because I don't have a pastor I can go torment with my personal issues for 4 or 5 hours a day on the telephone. Some men, I guess, are just never going to be at peace, and I'm one of them. Somebody saved my old blog posts, made them a zip file, and sent them to me. I can't find them wherever I put them. Oh, I beg your pardon. Too many questions. I wanted to be somebody who could give advice. I wanted to get online. I wanted to be somebody who could give advice to people. But what I find is that I end up giving people complexes. I don't know. I'm probably sitting there. I'm probably depressing the hell out of anybody listening instead of helping, and I don't like that. I wanted to make people. I want to make people happy. I want them to laugh. This is the one thing the one thing I've always been certain of: laughter. Laughter, the one absolutely certain good thing. You know. Sometimes the only medicine, the only sage advice, the only weapon that we have is a sense of humor, is a laughter. A merry heart doeth good like medicine. It's few things that I have that I'm absolutely certain. You know, any other pleasure in life is always tainted. I think this is why human beings are so obsessed with sex, because it's pleasurable, duh. But what it is that it is the most sex at its pinnacle, at its peak, at that sexually is the purest, most undiluted pleasure that you can that people will generally experience in this life. Every other pleasure in life, most every other pleasure in life, other than humor, and I will say that. If, the a satisfying meal is always diminished by the fact that it gives you heartburn later, or it makes you feel fat, or any one of 1,000 other things. The most beautiful music is diminished by the fact that every time you listen to it, it's a little less pleasant, until it becomes nothing but background noise. I've heard this 1,000 times. Every other aspects, well, even so-called religious epiphanies are diluted, but they come with a side sprinkling of guilt, self-doubt, self-recrimination. And we're not going to know perfect bliss and peace until we're at heaven's gate and walk through. But that moment of pleasure from sex, where everything else is blotted out, and that single moment of hilarity when something is so funny that everything just blanks out everything else. This is why you'll find people laughing their ass off on a battlefield. That he even can do that is extraordinary. People can be in incredible pain, in sorrow, in desperate peril, But a solid, genuine laugh. It's just so pure and sweet. It's like a drop of heaven. I've always felt that making something that makes people laugh, a joke, a comic strip, a funny picture, a funny story, just anything. I've felt that that's something that doing something so pure, clean, something that can bolster, can nourish, can shield, can be both a shield and a sword and a medicine all at once. I've always believed that something like that goes on forever. It goes out into the cosmos and keeps on going. I think that I believe that making people laugh, making innocent laugh is the simplest, humblest, and most universal work in the grace of God. Because, like I said before, it can be a weapon, it can be a shield, it can be be a nourishment, it can be a medicine. And it can be an education. This is why the most effective educators use humor. This is why the most effective politicians and statesmen have used humor. This is why the best educators use it. Because it stimulates the mind like nothing else. I think that humor was the last gift of heaven. I have no I have no scriptural basis to say that, but it's just my feeling. Bugs. In my whole life, it's been the one constant thing. It's the one thing that always made me feel better. I loved cartoons. I loved comedies. I've always loved comedies. I loved the classics. I have Three Stooges, Little Rascals, just anything that was funny. I would rather have that than anything else. Not romance, not drama, not action. If it was funny, I was like, God bless him. Give me some of that. Because I knew what made me feel good, and a laugh, an honest laugh. While as long as it lasts, you forget. You completely forget the pain that you're going through. I hope that I've brought at least some laughter to other people. I can't bring any. I can't say that I can bring any faith or wisdom or or anything like that to anybody else. Nothing that wasn't spoon fed to me first. But if I made some people laugh, I hope that God looks at it and says, it is well done. That was a good work. Because it's just about the only thing that I really know. It comes down to it. One thing I know how to, that I can do and know that it worked right. That's why it's so important to hear you. That's why it's so important to get feedback, to hear people laugh. Other people can inspire others to faith, to wisdom, to and who could other people can preach to people and inspire them to be more righteous. I can barely keep my own self on a leash, and not even that very often. Among Christians, I am, among as Paul put it, sinners among whom I am chief. But I at least can make people laugh. And all I can hope is that God sees that as a blessing. That is my prayer. I'm yet to live up. I'm yet to keep my own promise. I keep promising myself that I'm going to spend, today I'm going to spend an entire day just catching up on everything, getting everything done. Okay, I've got some good news. I've got a little bit of good news anyway. I've got I've already sent out. Oh, one thing. I've already sent out that last check to the IRS. Now all I have to do is try and save up $1,000 or so by next April, so that I can pay the taxes for this year. But I think that pretty much finishes it. It's probably going to be next month before they finish filing it and cashing it. But in other news, the DVDs, the Girls of Summer DVDs, I don't think I'm going to be running these anymore ever again. I don't know. But everybody that ordered a Girls of Summer DVD, I've got them ready to ship. I've got to get some extra post-its for a couple that go out to the United Kingdom, all the way to jolly old England. But the rest I'm going to pop in the mailbox tomorrow. Send them off. Excuse me. So those are going to be. I still haven't got the DVDs for the. I still haven't got the archive DVDs burned. I still haven't got them organized properly. I think once I have these printed out, once I have them done, I'm going to. Yeah, I think I'm going to be shutting that down as well. Because I've tried this before. I tried all those comic strips down the side of my website. Those are all ones that are quote unquote canceled. Nip and Tuck and Goblin Hollow were supposed to be stopped for good. Nip and Tuck especially. But no, here I am drawing more of them. I figured if I had less to do, I'd be able to concentrate on one or two things, but it doesn't work that way for me. Aggravating. Aggravating. Bugs in the face again. I am not going to end this on a depressing note tonight. I'm not going to do that to y'all. I'm tired of that. I'm tired of that. I'm tired of me. You know, most of my stories, the fan fictions basically started by asking a simple question: where to progress from. You know, the story always progresses from one question. For instance, now I've talked a lot about it. You know, there was a fan fiction called Past Sins. Past Sins was a question: What if Nightmare Moon was brought back as a little filly? You know, not as Luna, but as a separate little filly all by herself. And that story progressed from there. And I wrote I noticed that there was one big question that popped into my mind, especially after if you watch the show, they had an episode called Nightmare Night, where it was revealed for 1,000 years that they'd been celebrating this Halloween-style party, except it was all about how the evil Nightmare Moon was coming down to gobble up children on Halloween night. And Luna was walking right into the middle of it. And I looked at this and I asked myself, well, you know, okay, Past Sins, you have little Nyx, who is actually Nightmare Moon reincarnated, for lack of a better term. How is she going to deal with Nightmare Night for the first time? And that was where I came up with the story Nightmare Night and Nyx. And the next thing I know, I've got this something like 30-chapter gargantuan story. Let's see, my dashboard. Let's see, Oddman's Cheerlead's class, Rise of Death, welcome, great audience, parting words, starting over again. Nightmare Night and Nyx was 29 chapters long, 108,173 words. And it asks the question: what does the little filly who used to be Nightmare Moon, think about Nightmare Night? And so I ran with that story. And the next question that came up was, okay, in the original story, Past Sins, there was a crazy cult that was obsessed with bringing Nightmare Moon back. And I thought, you know, wouldn't there be another crazy obsessed cult out there determined to send Nightmare Moon away? You know, after having Luna come back as Nightmare Moon, then having Nyx come back as Nightmare Moon, they probably could. You know, you have to have at least a few people. No more Nightmare Moon. And so that's where the villains of Nightmare Night and Nyx came from. A couple of simple questions that progress the story, and then of course when I wrote Nightmare Night and Nyx, I made a plot hole. You see, in the original version, you know, the original author of the original version of Past Sins made some changes in his story after I had started writing mine, and I come to find out that in his story, Shining Armor and Cadence were on the outs with Twilight Sparkle at the end of the story, because of Nyx. Because Twilight had ended up adopting the little baby Nightmare Moon, aka Nyx. And during the course of the story, Nightmare Moon, aka Nyx, had actually managed to conquer Canterlot, brainwash and enslave Shining Armor, and Cadence had been forced to lead the rebellion forces who were hiding out in the woods. And so naturally, they weren't too comfortable with the fact that that Shining Armor's sister had adopted her afterwards. And so, but the thing was, in Nightmare Night and Nyx, I had he was just a loving fun uncle and aunt. They were a loving fun uncle and aunt, and everything was just fine with that. And so, great. I was like, crap, I've got a plot hole. And so I sat down and I started writing Nyx's family. Now, Nyx's family was originally supposed to be, I repeat this, Nyx's family was originally supposed to be 1 chapter long. Okay, 1 chapter. It was supposed to be a prequel. It was supposed to happen somewhere between the end of Past Sins and the beginning of Nightmare Night and Nyx. It was supposed to be 1 chapter about Shining Armor babysitting Nyx. And originally, he starts out with him being a hard ass about everything, and then realizing, this isn't Nightmare Moon in a little filly suit. This is just an ordinary little girl, who's got fears and issues, and who is loving and cries when she's sad, and just a normal little girl, and he bonds with her. And it was all supposed to be 1 chapter long. And son of a gun, I started writing, and this little 1 chapter, warm and fuzzy feeling plot hole patch turned into 33 chapters. 130,000 words, 130,046 words long. Holy crap. And by the time it was done, I had gone from this, it was supposed to have been a little warm and fuzzy scene. But surprise, by the end of it, I had a 5-way giant kaiju battle rampaging through the Crystal Empire. Just, ladies and gentlemen, that one got the bit in its teeth and took off across the countryside without me. I mean, I realized, okay, at this point, Shining Armor and Cadence are back in the Crystal Empire. How do I get Shining Armor and Cadence and Nyx all in the same place? And so I had Twilight. Oh goodness, they need somebody to help reorganize that messed up library. Take a trip out there and bring Nyx along. And the next thing. And why did she have to reorganize the library? Because Sombra had basically destroyed the filing system, just to make it hard for people to find stuff to use against him. And why was this a bad thing? It was because these people, everybody seems to forget that the ponies in the Crystal Empire had been out of place for 1,000 years, which means all the all that stuff that had been that for everybody else was ancient history was last week for them. And the next thing I know, we've got a secret, and all the big, and And the next thing I know, we have a lost tomb, secret archives, a lost history of the Crystal Ponies, and like I said, giant dragons battling their way across the city, and explosions and train wrecks, and it was awesome. Like, holy crap. And even at the end of it, I had Nyx lampshading it. She said, "Do you ever feel like you were the main character in a story and suddenly got pushed to the side?" Oh man, I don't rein myself in that much as it is. It's just I don't know where all that came from. I really, it's just that I just use it as a primo example of how rapidly my stories just run wild and free across the open plains if you give them a little bit of encouragement. I mean, every last one of my stories has that sort of issue. Let's take a look at it. I mean, the audience was the original idea behind the audience. Again, that was going to be a one-shot drabble. The audience, the original idea is that this human gets, the human in Equestria story. I cut to the chase. All the stories, all the human in Equestria stories, we have to bring him to see the princess. And they spend 4, 5, 10, 25, 50 chapters dragging his ass around Equestria before they finally bring him to the princess. And so I wrote the audience, and boom, there he is. Hi there, and cuts right to the moment where he has his audience with Celestia and Luna. That poor girl, sidelined even now. But and I also had him cut to the chase. Okay, where I come from, you're a cartoon. And I took it from there. And basically, I thought about why. Think about it. Think about this. All the human in Equestria stories. The princess goes, "Oh, you're a bit of all right. Here, we'll let you stay in Ponyville, hundreds of miles away from the capital. This little podunk town out in the middle of nowhere." In reality, any kind of ruler would be like, "Okay, you're going to stay close. You're an alien from another world. I think you're going to stay right here where I can keep an eye on you." Well, it was a double entendre. It also referenced the viewers of the show. But originally, it also referenced the fact, the royal audience, where he goes to meet the princess. It's a twofer. And Celestia isn't the kind of, stick somebody in a cage, so he basically becomes her first human ambassador / advisor. And it just grew from there. The other stories, let's see here. I already told you about Nyx's family, and and Nightmare Nyx. And let's see. Goodness, where's the rest of them? It's not showing them all. It is not showing them all. Okay. Let's see here. Cheerilee's class was just basically, let's be honest, school and your school friends is a pretty big chunk of a child's life. And so I wanted to look in on Cheerilee's class. How is her school changing now that the whole world turning around, and Ponyville was becoming the new. But by the time of Cheerilee's class, Ponyville was becoming the new Canterlot, because now they had Luna's castle, and they had the tree of the castle of friendship right there in town. Two castles to their one. Ponyville rules, Canterlot rules. But anyway. And the idea being that Ponyville was becoming a crossroads of the world. And so I decided to do it starting with the perspective of one of the little Batwing ponies. As a newcomer to the town of Ponyville, and a new student in, quote, Cheerilee's class. And Darth Vulcan. Darth Vulcan was a response to a real crappy self-insert story. The guy I don't know. It was written by somebody who sincerely hated the show. This guy, he shows up. He shows up in an anthro Equestria, where they're pony people instead of just regular ponies, and he gets the. He of course gets the amulet, the Alicorn amulet, and the first thing he does is he walks into Ponyville and proceeds to just tear things up just for the heck of it. No reason. It was awful, right? And just to show what a mean dick he was. And by the time he leaves, Fluttershy has been impaled on a giant spike of stone. Shot her up through her stomach and out her spine, and he left her there to die. What a brilliant writer. Like this is okay. This is awful in so many different ways I couldn't possibly list them all. And I decided if I was going to write a story about a jerk coming to somebody who hated My Little Pony coming to Equestria, and he was a jerk, I would do it. And I said I would do it differently. I would do this and I would do this, and give me that paper, I'll do it myself. And the next thing I know, I'm writing The Rise of Darth Vulcan, which I haven't touched in months. Let's see, last update was in January. Boy, I feel old. But anyway, I will get something someday. I'm making too many promises. I don't know. There's a question: what a real teenage jerk would act like in Equestria. He would be overconfident. He would be arrogant, and the only thing holding him together would be that amulet. You'll recall the first thing that he did was try and walked into Ponyville. He was like a bullying jerk. I'm going to go knock him around, smack him around the head until they send me home. That was his whole thing. He thought he was pissed off. He figured that some pony Poopsie McCandy Butt or something had been fiddling around with a magic mirror and sucked him into their world, and so now he's going to go and slap a few of them around until they give him the doorway back out. And the first thing he gets is his ass literally knocked clean across Ponyville when Twilight Sparkle blasts him one. Of course, it's been kind of downhill for them there ever since, because he's got a mean streak a mile wide and enough dirty tricks up his sleeve to keep anybody going. But he is running out of rope. Is what I'm trying to say, is that he's reaching the end of what raw cunning and power can do for you. And the cost that he's been paying physically and emotionally is starting to catch up with him. I haven't shown that very clearly, but it's starting to. parting words, that was my response. What if, you remember when Twilight Sparkle was sent off for her big test by sending her off to save the day in the Crystal Empire by herself with no help and no advice, no equipment, no nothing, not even the elements of harmony, nothing. And I was like, okay, let's pretend that Twilight isn't holding the idiot ball today. And basically I wrote parting words where basically Twilight stepped up and called the old woman out and said, are you out of your flippin' pointy-headed mind? We'd like some, okay, I'm going to be bringing my friends along. We'd like some things, fundage, some of those soldiers that you have lying around doing nothing. Some equipment. Oh yeah, the elements of harmony in case we have to run into some evil overlord sealed in a can. And she basically just tells Celestia off. And then when I was done with that, it was just 4 chapters long. I asked myself, what would the fallout be from that? One thing, when Twilight ascended, you will notice that Twilight never learned. Twilight, throughout the series, has never learned. She has never learned to question authority. And that's the big one that's getting me. She just blindly, as long as it looks like a moderately appropriate authority, she'll go off and she's Hermione. As long as it's written down in a book or said by Dumbledore, she'll walk off and do it. But in Twilight Sparkle's case, all Celestia had to do, all Celestia has to do is ask her to do something, and Twilight Sparkle will walk in. Twilight, would you mind sticking your head in this wood chipper? Oh, no problem, Your Highness. Gee, my horn's a lot shorter. And as long as it's written down in a book, she'll follow it. And it got to the point that now she's taking directions from a table. That Cutie Mark friendship Castle of Friendship magic table. And I'm like, oh please, my head. So what happens after parting words? What happens after my version, where Twilight finally gets some gumption together and says enough, and starts questioning what Celestia's been dishing out. Well, my assumption is that she wouldn't be so careless with she wouldn't be so careless with Star Swirl the Bearded's last book of magic spells, or with the elements of harmony. That she would demand some, that if Celestia sent her a book full of ancient magic, she'd have a few questions. Like, okay, 1, why? 2, are there any hazards or warnings I should know about? Any details you should tell me? Like, don't read this next to the elements of harmony? That kind of thing? Might be important to know, I think. And it ends up and consequence, all 6 of the main 6 end up becoming Alicorn princesses at the same time, and thus we end up with the Great Alicorn Hunt. Because I'm sorry, if you were an immortal ruler, or near a mortal ruler of a country full of people that died after 100 years, you would be spending at least a little bit of your time and intellect and resources on trying to find a way to help your poor people survive a little longer. That's natural. So it comes out that this is one of Celestia's goals. She wants to see more She and Luna want to see more of Equestria's ponies like themselves. More stronger, more powerful, and longer lived. And thus the Great Alicorn Hunt begins. And of course, Alicornundrum was another Nyxverse story where basically we already with Nightmare Knight and Nyx, we already saw what the common people are having to deal with, how they're reacting to the fact of Nyx. You know, the Greek alphabet conspirators, the Greek alphabet cult, quote unquote. You know, we're basically just a bunch of paranoid ponies who were terrified that Nightmare Moon was coming back yet again, and were conspiring together to get rid of Nyx. Now, what would the royalties' reaction be? Okay, first of all, Celestia has taken this student of hers. This student of hers has adopted what looks like a little Alicorn filly. You know, what is this going to mean to the royalty? What is this going to mean to the lineage to the throne? What is this going to mean for the, you know, what is this going to mean for the nobility and the royalty and all? And then there's the big question of, were there any repercussions from Nyx messing around with the sun and moon for so long? And the answer, of course, is a big yes. Stories start out with just a simple question. You know, what are the consequences? What are the consequences? Too many people, I've noticed this, is that very few people these days are willing to think about the consequences of anything. They don't come up with new perspectives. They come up with regurgitated versions of the original. This is why you have so many people who are into, for instance, Marxism in all its varied flavors of crap. Because they never reach a point where they go, nobody works, but nobody's rich, nobody has any wealth, but everybody has enough that they need, and they never go, and then power to the people will confiscate all their wealth and redistribute it, and then the two-word question that starts all stories, and then the two-word question that starts all real thought. You have to think at least several steps ahead. All these people who talk, if we raise the minimum wage, my paycheck will be larger. And then what? What happens next? What happens after you raise everybody's salaries? And you're not raising everybody's salaries, you're just raising the bottom rung. But that's enough that it's going to raise the, what's it going to do? It's going to raise, first of all, it's going to raise the cost of everything that is made with minimum wage labor. It's going to raise the cost of every service provided with minimum wage labor. Or more accurately, it's going to lower the value of the dollar. If you go from $7.50 an hour minimum wage and crank it up to $15 an hour minimum wage, what does that mean? That means that the American dollar is now worth half what it was at the start of the year. You have to think of it like this. Is that, don't think of it as $7 an hour. Think of it as $1 buying you 1/7 of an hour. 1/15. What's 1/15 of 60? 16 times 50 divided by 15 is 4. Yeah, 4 minutes. If we raise right now at $7.50 an hour, a dollar will buy you 8 minutes of labor. A dollar will buy you 8 minutes of minimum wage labor. If they raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, that means you can now buy 4 minutes of minimum wage labor with a dollar. You haven't raised anybody's pay, you've lowered the value of the dollar. Because the American dollar is no longer wedded to anything. It's no longer wedded to the gold standard. The gold standard kept money stable for hundreds and even thousands of years. And as long as we kept at least some of the gold standard, the American dollar was stable. But once they switched to fiat currency in 1964, that was it. We didn't take our money off. We switched from the gold standard to the minimum wage hourly standard. To the hourly standard. A dollar isn't worth so much gold anymore. It's worth so many minutes of labor at minimum wage. And it's been a runaway process ever since. I've said this before. The people that complain about, everybody has to listen to both sides. These people that are demanding their wages be raised to $15 an hour, they're in the right. Look, because in 1964, the year we went, the last year we had the American dollar, the money was still wedded to anything. In 1964, the minimum wage was $1.25 an hour. $1.25 an hour, which in today's money is about $15. These people who are working minimum wage, who are making $7.50 an hour, they're basically being paid half what their grandfathers were for the same job. So that, they're kind of in the right to be complaining. But the problem is they don't understand economics enough, and they're falling for the same mistaken assumption that if they raise the minimum wage, that means they have more money. No, it just means they have more paper. The first chapter of Cheerilee's class was actually inspired by a short story called Blessed January that I read when I was in school. It was about a little girl. The little girl's name was Jan, but that's what she told everybody. But her mother had named her January. Her mother was kind of a flake because she was born in January. Mother was a bit of a flake, like I said, and they had moved several times, and it was about the little girl dreading that introduction at the beginning of class, because she knew how this was going to go. She was going to come up to the class, here's our new student, what's your name, dear? And she was going to have to tell everybody her name, and everybody was going to laugh, and then everybody's going to start making fun of her, and then everybody's going to start picking on her because of her goofy, weird name. Again. And she gets up in front of the class, and she says, my name is Jan, and the teacher pokes her, and she says, okay, tell her and the teacher's got this funny look on her face. Tell her your full name. Tell your full name. And the little girl, my name's January. And the kids start laughing. And she's about to burst into tears, and the teacher said, okay, why don't you introduce yourself? And she points to the first girl in the front row, and the girl stands up. My name is April. And you, dear? Oh, my name's May. And then she points to the other. And what's your name? June. and apparently these girls had been going to this class, going to the same school for years, and they had been known as the calendar girls by their class as a running joke. And now they had a January. And so, they end up with them all sitting together. It was a cute little story. And that's kind of where I got the idea for the opening chapter of Cheerilee's class, where this little bad pony, he's used to being the weirdo in the class, and let's face it, Ponyville does not do normal. He's got one classmate who's a little black alicorn filly, and now he's got one who's a changeling, and one who's a dragon, and was. It's all about fitting in without losing yourself, Oh my. Okay, it is 10:30. I'm going to go ahead and call it a night. I just want to say thank you all for tuning in and putting up with my plexing. And I think I'm going to make this a regular thing every night at 7 or 8. Probably 8. It's supposed to be a broiler tomorrow, so it's going to be at least 8 before it's cool enough to be tolerable. Every night at 8, we'll do the show. Let's see if we can stick with that. I will see you all later. I want to thank you again. Say good night. Take care.